All right. All right. Gonna get it started. Hmm. All right. Peace, 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 peace. I'm Rami Salam El. Thank you for watching. Thank you for joining us. Today's video, today's class. Who are the Moorish Americans? More science for beginners. Thank you for watching. This series, this is the first of many videos that I'm going to be doing in an effort to present some information about various more science topics and areas, be it Moorish Americans, Noble Drew Ali, the Moorish Science Temple of America, Moorish literature, pretty much all of the terms and concepts that are connected to more science. I'm going to do my best to present this information um, in a way that beginners or people that aren't familiar with this information and want to learn more, for a way that you can receive this information and then go off and do your own studies and investigate it and learn for yourself, you know. Um, and so, I'm gonna wait a second and then we will get started. And while we were waiting, I wanted to just pull up a video for us to check out. Okay. Islam, Islam, peace, peace, peace. Happy holy day indeed. Um, I'm gonna play a little bit of this and then we are gonna get started. Okay. Let me get myself out of there. There we go. And then let me zoom out. Just make sure we can get this on the screen. Bam. So we'll play a little bit of this and then we will I'll get to some information for you.
Have the most distinguished brother with us. We haven't seen him for a while, but we're glad that he's back here again. That's the I. Davis Hill.
Glad to be here too.
Thank you.
Indeed.
You're very much needed. Put it that way.
Praise Allah.
uh, Today our topic is about us. Mainly, we have a lot of questions that was presented to us by quite a few of our listening audience, and we just said, well, hey, we're going to talk about that this evening. We're going to talk about the Moorish Americans. Just who are the Moorish Americans? Why do we have such a nationality as Moorish Americans? Brother I. Davis Hill, where did the concept of Moorish Americans come from? What can you tell our audience about the Moorish Americans and its derivative?
Well, we know that historically our people have been known as Moors. We know that we're Moorish Americans because our prophet Noble Drew Ali told us we was that. He also informed us to spend an hour in an up-to-date library. And upon research, you'll discover that you are in fact of Moorish descent. So we know, based upon the guidance of the Honorable Prophet Noble Drew Ali, that we are Moorish American. Otherwise, we would have not known. We would have not had any clue as to where to look for our nationality.
So Moorish American is a nationality.
Oh, truly. Moorish American is as much as a nationality as an Italian American or an Irish American. The fact is, every group of people has a national descent. You know, it's a part of being a human being.
Well, let me ask you like this. Why are we Moorish Americans?
Our Prophet Noble Drew Ali has told us that we are descendants of Moroccans and and born in America because we're here to uplift fallen humanity. And the only people who can do that are people with a nationality. You have to know who you are in order to know where you're headed or going. And in our case, we're Moorish Americans because we are descendants of Moroccans and born in America.
All right, all right. I'll stop it right there. Let me get this off the screen real quick. Bam. All right, all right. So now, yeah, I know you may have heard that and like, well, who are those people? That's an older video. Matter of fact, I dropped that in the chat. I think it's very important for anybody that's interested to listen to the video in full, so you can get a full context of everything right there. But I wanted to kick it off um, right from there. The idea of, you know, this term Moorish American. What does it mean? You know, when you have two words put together, just like Italian American or German American or Chinese American or Japanese American, you also have this term Moorish American. Um, and as the brother said in the video, um, Noble Jew Ali, who created and founded what is known as the Moorish Science Temple of America. Um, he was the one that came and taught us back in the early 1900s that the so-called Negro, black person, colored person, um, so-called Afro-American, um, now modernly known as quote unquote African American. Pardon me. He came to teach us, you know, to teach those people um, and the rest of the world that that is not the proper name for those people. That the so-called Negro, black person, colored person, African American had an identity before those labels were placed on our people, on us, and that identity is Moorish American. And why we are Moorish American is because we are descendants of Moroccans and born in America. And for context, I'll actually drop a link so that you can see precisely where that language came from. And you can find it. It's often referred to as Quran questions for Moorish Americans or Quran questions for Moorish children. The link I put in the chat is to hermetic.com/Moorish/Quran questionnaire. And it is 101 question and answers that Noble Drew Ali put forth to the members of the Moorish Science Temple of America and to, you know, so-called Negro, Black, and colored people to give them some basic information. And in that questionnaire, and I'll actually pull it up. I'll actually pull it up here. Let me adjust that screen real quick. Bam. Okay. And we're gonna go step by step here so we can get an understanding. And we can all follow along and kind of get an understanding of what's going on. If I could zoom in just a little bit more. Here we go. And right here is the questions. Questions 13 and 14 are what we're dealing with today. And in the questionnaire, he says, what is your nationality? Well, first, he actually asks, what is his nationality? Noble Drew Ali. And the answer is Moorish American. Then he is speaking to the so-called Negro, Black, and Colors, asking, what is your nationality? Answer is Moorish American. Then the following question, why are we Moorish Americans? Because we are descendants of Moroccans and born in America. Well, see, I don't even want to get to the why because we're not done getting to the who. So let me get back to that. And again, the who are Moorish Americans is the so-called Negroes, Blacks, and Coloreds, so-called Afro-Americans, so-called African Americans, who are here mainly in North America, in the United States of America. We have been, those labels and names have been placed on our people, but we had a proper name before those labels were put on us. And in fact, actually, I'll go to what in a second. I'll go to what is known as Moorish literature, which is a collection of different writings and excerpts and essays from Noble Drew Ali during the time when he was alive. And one of the excerpts that I'm going to read from, it's entitled, What Shall We Call Him? And actually, let me just pull that up and then read from it like that so that you can see it as well. Okay. And I just, before I continue, I just want to make it clear. Hold on one second. Before I continue, if you have questions in regards to the topic for today, who are the Moorish Americans, then please put them in the chat. If you're watching this after the live stream, you can put the comments in the comment section or the questions in the comment section, and I'll do my best to respond to them. If you need clarification, if you needed to know what was the link or where was the source that you were reading from, just ask it in the chat or in the comment section, and I'll get right back to you so you can verify and investigate this further for yourself and know for yourself. And that's partly because this is more science for beginners, and science is really just dealing with knowledge. So it's really more knowledge for beginners. And science can be verified. It's, we have the data and the evidence that people can research and look up for themselves. We will be speaking about topics and things that are connected to religion or beliefs, but this information is more scientific, it's more evidence-based, dealing with things that you can prove and verify through historical records and such. And if you are like some other individuals asking questions that are not related to this topic, then I will not answer them at this time because I really want to focus on providing the information for people that are just learning. And so I'm not really trying to address individuals that may be coming in with distractions. Okay, now let's get back to it. What shall we call him? Let me zoom in here. Bam. Like that there. Boom. Okay. And so it says in this excerpt entitled, What Shall We Call Him from Moorish Literature? And you can find this at moorishkingdom.tripod.com/ID56. moorishkingdom.tripod.com/ID56. This is Moorish literature. This excerpt is What Shall We Call Him? And it reads, so often our various journalists find trouble in selecting the proper name for the Moorish American. Some say Negro, quote unquote Negro. Other will brand him, quote unquote, race man. Still another will call him, quote unquote, Afro-American. And then come colored, dark American, coon, shine, the brethren, and your folks. It is indeed a hard matter. It is indeed a hard matter to find something suitable for the various occasions where a title needs to be used. Is it that these people, so-called black people, so-called African American, or so-called Negro, is it that these people have no proper name? Did they have a national name when first brought to these shores in the early part of the 17th century? I just want to highlight the 17th century is talking about the 1600s. One moment here. We're going to go ahead and do this here. In the early part of the 17th century, referring to the 1600s. If so, what was it? What was the national name? Did not the land from which they were forced have a name? It now appears a good idea for those whose duty it is to write for the various journals to find out what the national name of the forefathers of these people was. Also goes on to say, look into the history of the founders of civilization and see who they were and where they stood in the building of the present civilization. Probably 2 hours in an up-to-date library would serve to relieve the strain on our men of letters. When the occasion presents itself for a title for these people, the matter of the various names given to these 22 million people with all colors of every race of the globe was an act of European psychology. They gave him a name and then defined it as something inferior to theirs. White, they defined as a color of purity. Black, they say, represents everything of evil. The Negro, as they were called in this nation, United States of America, have no nation to which they might look with pride. Their history starts with the close of the Civil War, and more properly with his being forced to serve someone else. Thus he is separated from the illustrious history of his forefathers, who were the founders of the first civilization of the old world. This matter should be looked into with a hope of correcting it. Okay, all right. Very powerful stuff. And from there, get back to the screen. All righty. I wanted to highlight one more piece. Here we go. There we go. Let me get back to sharing this screen here. Here's another excerpt from the Moorish literature. And just to summarize, in the what shall we call him? In that portion, it wasn't the idea was to get people who are well studied or journalists to investigate it for themselves to verify, who were the forefathers of these so-called Negro people, because they had to come from some sort of nation. They had to have had a proper name. And what that is, inferring or helping us see is that Negro, Black, colored, Afro-American, African-American, person of color, people of color, those are not proper names or proper way to identify people. People have a nationality and a heritage that they come from and that they can be identified with. And it's very important that we don't disconnect people from their heritage. So let me get back to this and continue on. And this section is called Nicknamed. And it says, when the forefathers of the, and again, this is from the Moorish literature. When the forefathers of the Moorish Americans were first brought to this nation, They had a nationality and a name. But in order to separate them from the achievements of their fathers, a name was given to them which had no connection whatsoever or whatever with the founders of civilization. They were nicknamed Negroes. Today in this nation, there is no such thing as Negroes in this sense that they are called. Just why so many of the intelligent Americans will continue to cling to this nickname is hard to understand. And I just pause right here for a second and say that, now in 2022, uh, most so-called Negroes identify as Black or African American, but this concept still applies that, this nickname that was placed on us has no real connection to our forefathers, who are the founders of civilization. But let me continue. It reads, if you look in some dictionaries, you will see that the word Negro means a sly person, a coon. If this is not an insult to the illustrious history of a nation, there can never be one given. Just as they have saddled on the Moorish Americans the name Negro, they have also given him a religion that was made to enslave him and stop his progress. It is the duty of every man who lives to redeem the name of his forefathers and not be herded into a mass of weaklings. Stop referring to yourself as Negro, colored, and Black, for you are neither. If you are men and women, American citizens, speak up for yourselves, or it will never be done. As long as you wear the clothes of another, or live in the house of another, or depend on another in any manner, you are truly a slave to them. If you would be free, indeed, you must seek the truth. I'll read that one again. If you would be free, indeed, you must seek the truth. You must know the truth of your nationality and the name of your people. You must not be a coward and deny yourself the personal rights that belong to every man. Let me stop right there. Some powerful words there, some very words, helping us to understand, um, just what happened. And to summarize again, Noble Drew Ali even teaches this in the religious book that is known as the Quran Circle 7, or the Holy Quran of the Moorish Science Temple of America. I'll just read a quick excerpt in here that just re-emphasizes what I read. It says in chapter 47, line 17, that's why the nationality of the Moors was taken away from them in 1774, and the word Negro, Black, and colored was given to the Asiatics of America who were Moorish descent, because they honor not the principles of their mother and father, and strayed after the gods of Europe, whom they knew nothing of. So just again highlighting that those names, Negro, Black, and colored, and now more commonly African American, those were put on to us and our ancestors, and our true proper name that connects us to our history and our heritage and our nationality was taken away from us, was stripped from us, along with religion. But I don't want to focus on that in this particular video. I really want to just focus on this idea, or not even idea, this understanding of who the Moorish Americans are. So by now, if I haven't been clear yet, who are the Moorish Americans? So-called Blacks, Negroes, Coloreds, Afro-Americans, African Americans. If you are identified, if you know or call yourself those titles or those labels, Black, Colored, African American, etc., then you actually are a Moorish American. And to dig a little bit further, because I also want to look at some information that's outside of what Abu Ali presented, so that you can understand that this isn't just a belief. This isn't just based on a religious ideology or spiritual ideology that is actually connected to history. And if you understand, if you look up the word Moorish, matter of fact, let me pull that up. Free dictionary works. Now we'll get to the scientific aspect of it, just so that we can kind of understand and walk step by step. And if you have any questions, please drop them in the chat. I would definitely respond. Here we go. And so, just so that we can break this down and understand the connection, on the screen now, you can see this is freedictionary.com. You can look in pretty much any dictionary, encyclopedia, and look up the term Moorish. And Moorish is defined, you can see here. Let me zoom in. There we go. Moorish is defined as of or relating to the Moors or their culture. And again, I don't want to talk about the architecture, but as it said in the Quran questionnaire that I read earlier, and it says, why are we Moorish Americans? Because we are descendants of Moroccans and born in America. Some of you may say, well, if we're descendants of Moroccans, then why are we not Moroccan Americans? And I think that's a very valid question. I can't say this for 100% fact, but from my understanding, one, to identify ourselves as Moroccan American would put us in a bit of conflict. People that were born in Morocco and identify as Moroccans that then came over the United States and became Moroccan American citizens. From my perspective, this is connecting us to the history and the heritage of the people that have been in what we now know as Morocco and anciently, not just in the recent times, because if you look, matter of fact, that show you I pulled up history of Morocco, because if you look into Morocco now, you may see the Kingdom of Morocco, and that has a date of 1956 to present. But the history of Morocco goes back much farther than that. So I want to pull that up just to get some references in here. And I'm not going to go, but it's just to give you a hint and show you some information so that you can verify and look it up further for yourself. And so if you see, let me see, yeah. This is like a on the very right side. Oops, let me drop the link in there. And this is coming from the Wikipedia website, the history of Morocco. If you just look into Morocco, pull up Morocco Wikipedia online, an online encyclopedia. It has a timeline, the eras of Morocco. And if you see down here, modern, it says 1956 to present. And then it says protectorate, 1912 to 1956. And then if you go back further, you actually see there was a Moroccan empire beginning in the 11th century AD, or the 1000s. So And the decline started in the 19th century AD. And if you go back further, you can see it says classic to late antiquity, 8th century BC to 7th century AD. So there's a substantial history, and then it has a prehistory. But I want to read, I'm going to zoom out just a little bit and just read this first paragraph, first couple of paragraphs. And here we go. Can you see that there? Cool. All right. And this is the history of Morocco. It says history of human habitation in Morocco spans since Lower Paleolithic, with the earliest known being Jebel Irhoud, Irhoud. I apologize, I don't know how to pronounce that. Much later, Morocco was part of Ibero-Maurusian culture, including Taforalt. That's a tough one. Taforalt. Taforalt. It dates from the establishment of Mauritania and other ancient Berber kingdoms to the establishment of the Moroccan state by the Idrisid dynasty, followed by other Islamic dynasties through to the colonial and independence periods. And this is where we get into the science, people. Archaeological evidence has shown that the area was inhabited by hominids at least 400,000 years ago. 400,000 years ago. Let me continue. This is why it's important to know our history. The recorded history of Morocco begins with the Phoenician colonization of the Moroccan coast between the 8th and 6th centuries BCE. Okay, 8th and 6th centuries BCE. So that's going back 2,000 years and then back another 800 to 600 years before then. Although the area was inhabited by indigenous Berbers, oh goodness, we're going to get to that in 1 second. Although the area was inhabited by indigenous Berbers for some 2,000 years before that. So the recorded history begins in the 8th century BCE, but the area was inhabited by indigenous Berbers for some 2,000 years before that. It says in the 5th century BCE, the city-state of Carthage extended its hegemony over the coastal areas. They remained there until the late 3rd century BCE, while the hinterland was ruled by indigenous monarchs. Indigenous Berber monarchs ruled the territory from the 3rd century BCE until 40 CE, when it was annexed to the Roman Empire. In the mid-century, 5th century CE, it was overrun by Vandals before being recovered by the Byzantine Empire. The region was conquered by the Muslims, or also referred to as Moors. If you look into, and let me just pause on the screen for a second. There's a lot of terms that I'm using. You heard Berbers, it mentioned Mauritania, and now it's referring to the area being conquered by Muslims. But I want to make it clear that at this time in history, Muslim was used synonymously with people from North Africa, as in Moors, Berbers. They also referred to as Saracens, or Arabs, sometimes Arabs. So when you're looking into this information and you start doing your studying, this is why it's important to look into all of these different terms and these different time periods of history. And in particular, when it mentions the Muslims in the early 8th century, this is referred to as the golden age of Islam. And this is historically known, and you can see and it can be verified that Moors will refer to Muslims and Muslims refer to Moors almost synonymously. So I don't want you to get confused when you see that term that it was conquered by the Muslims and think, well, what does that have to do with Moors? It's still the same people. It's just very similar to how currently or more modernly we're known as African Americans today, but we were also referred to as colored people or Negroes or blacks. The different terms, but they are used interchangeably. Let me get back to the screen. The region was conquered by the Muslims in the early 8th century CE, broke away from the Umayyad Caliphate to the Berber Revolt of 740. Half a century later, the Moroccan state was established by the Idrisid dynasty. Under the Almoravid and Almohad dynasties, Morocco dominated the Maghreb and Muslim Spain, also known as Al-Andalus or Andalusia. The Saadi dynasty ruled the country from 1549 to 1659, followed by the Alawites from 1667 onwards, who have since been the ruling dynasty of Morocco. Now, I want to go this term, indigenous Berbers, particularly because it states that this area, which we now know as Morocco, was inhabited by indigenous Berbers for some 2,000 years, before. This is like, we're talking a good 4,000 years ago. So I wanted to show you when you click to indigenous Berbers, and I looked this up earlier, excuse me. Berbers, can you see this here? Zooming in. Berbers, also called Amazigh or Amazian, that's how you pronounce it, are the ethnic group indigenous to the Maghreb region of North Africa, specifically Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, and Libya, and to a lesser extent, Mauritania, northern Mali, and northern Niger. So we're talking about North and a little bit of Northwest Africa. But I wanted to go down because I saw something that was important. Here we go. Name, just to highlight to show you the connection. Let me zoom out just a little bit. Okay. This section right here. And I'll just read real quickly. The indigenous ethnic population of the Maghreb region of North Africa are as a collective known as Berbers or Amazigh in English. The plural form Amazian, I gotta figure out how to pronounce that, apologies, is sometimes also used in English. While Berber is more widely known among English speakers, its usage is a subject of debate due to its historical background as an exonym and present equivalence with the Arabic word for barbarian. So Berber it seems like it's more of a slight, and you really should refer to the indigenous population as Amazigh, the Amazigh people. But specifically, if you look at the second sentence here, let me just highlight this so you can see very clearly. The Numidian, the Mari or Moor, okay? The Numidian, Mari or Moor, and Lebu populations of antiquity are typically understood to refer to approximately the same population as modern Amazigh or Berbers. So I'm highlighting this. I wanted to highlight that specifically so that you could understand when you're looking into the history of this, and it talks about we are descendants of Moroccans and born in America, that now when you look into the history of Morocco, you're not just talking about the Kingdom of Morocco from the 1900s, but you're talking about anciently, and that those people anciently are connected to the term the indigenous population that have been in North Africa, Northwest Africa for thousands of years. that they are referred to as Berbers or Amazigh, but those terms are connected and referring to the population of people also known as Moors. So that's the connection and understanding that this term Moor or Moorish, and us being of Moorish descent, dates back much further than the Kingdom of Morocco. And so when it's talking about the descendants of Moroccans, um, you know, we're talking about people that have been there anciently. We have to understand that this isn't just talking about a couple hundred years, a couple 100 years ago or so, but we're talking thousands of years. Um, and it's important, and it's, I would say, to look into all of those terms. Look into Mauritania. Look into Amazigh and the history of Berbers. Look into all of these histories so you can see for yourself. Look into Phoenicians as well. Um, and I also, let me see if I can find it. Let's see if I can find it. 1 second. I wanted to highlight name. Can I find the name? Here we go. No, that's not. Just give me 1 second. There we go. Let me share this screen again. I appreciate the comments, but respectfully, this video, I'm really just trying to focus on who are the Moorish Americans. But I do appreciate the comments. I just wanted to highlight, we're getting a little bit of far, but I just think it's important since we're talking about indigenous people and the Amazigh. This is the names of the Berber people, and we're talking about Amazigh being the indigenous name. And if you see here, it says Amazigh or free. Can you see? Let me zoom in. Amazigh is defined as free man. Okay, so when you're talking about the indigenous people, that the name for those people was Amazigh, and it was meant. The meaning of it is free man. Now, understand the difference between the indigenous name Amazigh, and this is talking about ancient connected peoples, and its definition or meaning being free man, and then you move to the nicknames or the labels that are placed on us as a people now: Black, Negro, um, African American, color. All of those terms are connected to us being enslaved. It's very powerful, and this is why it's important to know who you are, know your history, know your heritage. Again, here it says it again. According to, let me zoom out just a little bit. According to the Berber author Leo Africanus, Amazigh meant free man. Some argue that there is no root of Imzai, meaning free, in the modern Berber languages. However, that term, to be noble or generous, exists among the Amazigh of central Morocco. Just breaking down the etymology further and just showing you the connection to free man. And let me see, was there something else that I wanted to cover? I got them. Oh, I wanted to go back to the video, actually. The video that I played earlier. And I'll take a break real quick. Let me pull this up and we'll listen to some more of the video. Bam.
When you say descendants of Moroccan, could you be a little bit more specific? I mean, where is the Moroccan Empire?
Well, the Moroccan Empire comprises the northwestern and southwestern shores of Africa, including the Americas, North America, South America, Central America, including Mexico, of course.
You're speaking of continents then.
Indeed.
Well, you know, I'd like to just go back to a piece of literature that the Prophet Noble Durali guided the Moorish Americans on. And in that piece of literature, he specifically says that the present Moroccan Empire is northwest, southwest, a Mexim.
Indeed.
A Mexim. And I want to get this brother in here. We don't want him to be too laid back there. What is he saying, geographically speaking, Brother P. Davis Hill?
He's saying that long before the Europeans came to America, long before the Europeans realized that the world was round, that our people, the people who are referred to in these modern days as being Negroes, colors, and blacks, we refer to them as being Moors, that they were here in America, North, South, and Central America, and they also lived in what's called Africa. The two lands were once together, and they were separated by the great earthquake. Prior to that earthquake, there was free travel across the land.
I see.
There was trade, and there were rivers for transportation, and our people inhabited both lands. And of course, the earthquake occurred and caused a separation between the peoples of our people of that part of a Mexican and the people in this part of a Mexican. But we all the same people.
Let's see. You know, that's very interesting too, and I want to make I want to highlight that just a little bit, if I may. The so-called slaves, so-called Negro, blacks, and coloreds, who were known, who history has shown that they were slaves, came from Northwest Africa. So, based on the information that the brother P. Davis Hill just gave us, um, anyone who has gone through slavery, who came from that area, the west coast of Africa, is in a sense, well, according to all divine records, is a Moorish American, or has the potential to proclaim the nationality of Moorish American. Should we say it that way?
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay. So, how does one become a Moorish American? Let's say, for instance, now before you answer, let me just set it up for you real good. All right.
I'm fast forwarding because I want to not so much get into how do you become a Moorish American, but I want to stick to the who are the Moorish Americans. And there's a piece that speaks on the American aspect of that name that I want to highlight. Here we go.
Before our listening audience, I like to pose those kind of questions because
Yes, for sure.
those are some of the questions that we have been getting, and the tremendous amount of mail that we've been receiving, the tremendous amount of calls that we've been receiving on our voicemail as well as when we're there, and they want to know. We know now. You've heard it. It's legal to proclaim your nationality. Some of our people have a problem with being called American, Brother I. Davis Hill. They say, I don't want to have anything to do with America. America this. America, from the teachings of our Prophet Noble Durali, is our land as just as much as it is anyone else's land. We're part of this government just as much as anyone else is. And one thing that I think is paramount is that America is a continent. Is that right?
Oh, absolutely.
So Canada is in North America.
That's Mexico.
So these people are Americans too, is that right?
Indeed.
South America is a continent. The Venezuelans are Americans. They just live in the southern part
Of the Americas.
of the Americas. I think we have an organization called Organization
Of American
of
States.
American States. Yeah.
Yes.
No,
So some of the islands are, the American islands are involved in that too, right?
That's right.
Cuba,
yeah.
right?
Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico. Okay.
And to get back to you, I didn't mean to cut you off, but to just emphasize the point that you were making. All of our people who call themselves Negroes, colors, and blacks didn't come over here in slave ships.
Good point.
As we pointed out, many of our people were already here in America long before the Europeans arrived and long before the first slave ship arrived. In fact, our people are the original inhabitants of this land that's called America. In the history, they are referred to as Indians. Even in the American history, they are referred to as Indians. And you will recall, if you read the American history, that when the Europeans got here, they also attempted to put the people here in slavery.
Yeah.
And one way that they created the slavery institution in America was to divide the dark from the light, the dark skin from the light skin. And as we know, there were those who were called Indians who were very dark skinned.
Here we speak of the Nanacoke,
Right.
the Mohawks, the Mohegans,
And
the Chippewas, the Seminoles.
and the Seminoles, right.
Of course, yeah.
Right.
And slavery, the dark ones, they were sought out for slavery. And many of the so-called Indian tribes were bribed and threatened to sell the dark ones into slavery, or to turn over the dark ones into slavery. Many of them rebelled. And so they began to fight their way from the northeast to the southeast, and most of them ended up in Florida. And they were called the Seminoles. These were the dark ones, along with some of their lighter skinned brethren, who were running from the institution of slavery. And the history of the United States is replete with many examples of our people here in America, the dark ones. There are even photographs of them wearing turbans here in America, who were fighting against the institution of slavery, and they ended up in the state in Florida, and they were called runaways. Those who refused to go into slavery. These were people who were native to America.
They were already here.
They were
They were aware that they were Moors.
right. They were the original inhabitants of America. So, to your question, that you said that some people pose that they don't want to be called Americans.
Absolutely.
Well, you can't give that up because we are the original inhabitants of this land called America.
Right.
The dark ones, just like me and you.
Right.
So I'm very proud to be called a Moorish American. I claim my heritage from my brothers and sisters on that side of the Atlantic, as well as my brothers and sisters on this side of the Atlantic.
Interesting.
I'm very proud to be both.
You know, some of our people will even tell you, they'll say things like, well, I have some Indian blood in me. My grandmother is Cherokee, or my grandfather is Seminole. What does that mean?
I'm gonna stop right there with the video, but I wanted to highlight that, and it kind of was choppy at the end, but he was saying that he's proud of his heritage and his history and his lineage over there with our ancestors in the East or Africa, North Africa, Northwest Africa, as well as our heritage and our history here in the Americas. And we need to be proud of both of those, and because we are Moorish American. We are descendants of Moroccans or descendants of Moors and born here in the Americas. And I think it's important as I close out, when you hear that explanation of why we are Moorish American, well, again, who are the Moorish Americans? Just to summarize, the Moorish Americans are the so-called Negroes, blacks, coloreds, African Americans, Afro Americans, um, that are here, generally speaking, that are here in the United States of America. And uh, those labels, Black, Negro, Colored, African American, etc., were placed on us as part of the system to enslave us. So our original or our proper names, our nationality that's connected to our heritage and our history was stripped away from us, was taken away from us. And you can see that concept played out in the film Roots, where he was being whipped and they were asking him what's his name, and he was saying Kunta Kinte, and the enslavers were trying to force him to identify himself as Toby. And that is essentially the process that all of our ancestors and our people went through when we were enslaved here in this country, is that we were stripped and our names were forcibly taken from us, and these enslavement labels were placed on us. But we are not those labels. So if you are Black, if you are identifying or labeled as Black, Negro, Colored, African American, Afro American, um, you are a Moorish American. You are a descendant of Moroccans or Moors and born in America. And I also want to highlight, as the brothers did there, that many of our people were already here in the Americas before Christopher Columbus and the other Europeans that came over to colonize these lands and this continent. Before they ever came over here, many of our people were already here. And there were some of our ancestors that were enslaved from Africa, from Northwest Africa, North Africa, etc., and forcibly brought over here. But there was also many of us that were already here in the Americas long before they ever came over here to enslave people. So it's important when you hear that descendants of Moroccans and born in America, not just necessarily meaning recently, but our ancestors have been born in America for hundreds and hundreds and thousands of years. But I don't want to get too deep into that concept because I'm trying to keep it for beginners. But it's important to understand that who are the Moorish Americans? The so-called Black people that are here in the United States of America, North America. So-called African Americans were called. Were also called quote unquote Negro. If you look back a little bit further, like 1960s, somewhere around there, we were at one point referred to as Afro Americans. But none of those labels, none of those nicknames, if you will, none of those terms is the proper way to identify our people. Um, and you should be proud to identify yourself with your proper name that ties you back to the beautiful and amazing heritage and history and the culture of our people, which is Moors. And that is why we should identify ourselves as Moorish American. That's the understanding or the reasoning behind it. You know, those labels, Black, Negro, African American, those go back to our enslavement, but it cuts off and it disconnects us from our true history and our true culture and our heritage. So, as Noble Drew Ali has said, and others have said, you know, if you are, if you want to be a free man, if you want to free yourself from those um, the mental enslavement that we are suffering from, then we must let go of those slave terms such as Black, Negro, Colored, African American, and begin to identify ourselves properly as Moorish Americans. And then that also gets into the idea of our names. You may have, I don't want to get too far into that concept, but you know, if you are a so-called Black person, so-called African American, I'm sure you have heard the term, this is our, the name you were born with may have been a slave, a quote unquote slave name, or the name um, that the enslavers placed on our people. And to be free, which is why uh, the brother Muhammad Ali, also El Hajj Malik El Shabazz, rest in peace to them both. That was part of their understanding and mentality, and why they let go of their slave, quote unquote, slave names, such as Cassius Clay for Muhammad Ali or Malcolm Little for El Hajj Malik El Shabazz. And they let go of those names and picked up or began identifying with a name that is not connected to the people that enslaved their ancestors, but ties them back to the beautiful and amazing history and culture and heritage of our ancestors. And we should be proud to identify ourselves by names that connect us back to our people, connect us back to our nationality, connect us back to our culture, our religion, our way of life, our heritage, our history. Um, I appreciate the question here at the bottom. Why are our surnames on coat of arms if we were enslaved? Um, that's a great question. I don't want to get into that specifically during this live, because I really am trying to focus just on the concept of who are the Moorish Americans and the connections around that. But I do appreciate the question. Maybe ask it in the comment section, and then we can continue the conversation in regards to that, where I can kind of elaborate a little bit further. Um, does anyone have any more questions that are connected in regards, or anything you want me to clarify in terms of who are the Moorish Americans? Are we clear on who those people are? If I was to say, hey, who are the Moorish Americans? The response or the answer, hopefully you will understand by the end of this video, is that they are the so-called Negroes, Blacks, Coloreds, African American people here in the United States of America, or or the Americas. Um, those are who the Moorish Americans are. Um, and if you wanted to understand, well, why do you call yourself Moorish American? Well, our ancestors, our heritage, before we were, those labels were placed on us, such as Black, Negro, Colored, etc. We were identified and known, our people was known, our ancestors were known as Moors or Moorish. And so identifying ourselves as Moorish Americans is how we uh, break free from the mental enslavement and reconnect ourselves to the history and the heritage and the culture and our people that we were forcibly disconnected from or disattached from. Um, yeah. Is there any other questions? And again, I'll put the links that I was referring to, such as the Moorish literature, the 101, the 101 questions for the Quran questions for Moorish Americans, the encyclopedia links. I'll put all of those in the description so that you can go back through this video and look for yourself. And even the video that I was playing with the elders speaking, I also put the link to that YouTube, because that video is about I think like about an hour long. And so I encourage you to watch that video as well and listen closely to all of the things that are mentioned in that video. Investigate it for yourself, do the research, um, find the data, find the evidence, so that you can know you're not just believing it because I'm saying it, but you can actually understand and see the connection and the links back into history and begin to be more proud of your heritage and be more proud of our people, because we are way more than just slaves. We are way more than just Black people or colored people or Negroes or African Americans. All due respect to people who identify as those terms, but as a people, we have to let go of those slave labels or those enslavement labels and begin to identify ourselves and reconnect ourselves to our true history, to our proper names and our proper nationality, which is Moorish American, not African American, because African American is two continents. That's not connecting us to an actual nation and an actual country. You know, Africa is a continent, and America is a continent. That's why you have Venezuelan American, or Brazilian American, or um, Cambodian American. Who else? Let me see who else I can shout out. Liberian American, Libyan American, Russian American. Um, I said German American, Iranian American. Yeah. So all of those different people, looking at the map, all of those different people, they identify themselves as American citizens, but they also are retaining and holding on to their heritage and their history and their nationality, which is the first part of that hyphenated label. And we too, the so-called Negroes, so-called Black people, we too are American citizens, but we also have a nationality and a culture and a heritage and a history, um, and a people that we come from, and a nation and a country and a place that our ancestors come from. And that is why we identify ourselves as Moorish American. I'm late, but is this speaking to genealogy or just a descriptive term of those that descend from North Africans, America today? I'm a little confused about that question. I appreciate the question. It's definitely, just to be clear, genealogy is dealing with a record or a table of this of the descent of a person, family, or group from an ancestor or ancestors, a family tree, direct descent from an ancestor, lineage, or pedigree. Yeah, this is not looking at the detailed specifics of a individual or a group of individuals' literal ancestral tree in that sense, but it is dealing with genealogy in terms of our ancestors and the lineage from which we come from, and it's dealing with, I would say, more than just the descriptive term, more the proper name. Yeah, the proper name for us as a people, which is Moorish American, um, not Negroes, Blacks, Coloreds, African Americans. Yeah, and not necessarily North Africans in America, because there are Tunisian Americans, there are Moroccan Americans, there are, what else? Algerian Americans, that are dealing with, the people in North Africa in the present day right now. Um, and I don't even necessarily want to get too much into that, but just understand that this is dealing more so um, with the so-called Blacks, Negroes, Coloreds, African Americans, and our true or our proper name the proper identity for us as a people that connects us back to our nationality, our heritage, our history, our culture, our religion, um, and that is the reasoning for identifying ourselves as Moorish American. Whew. All right, that is it's was that about an hour? Where are we at? Hour 10? Okay, yeah. Um, Thank you for the questions. Um, is there any other questions? Um, is there any other questions that I can answer? Anything to clarify in terms of who are the Moorish Americans? I hope it was clear. I hope that I provided some information for you to research and investigate for yourself. Um, And the next class, we'll get into Noble Drew Ali. I wanted to start off with Moorish Americans, but I think it's important to, in the next class, focus on who Noble Drew Ali is and get into the history as much as we can of that individual, because without him, or he was the first person to bring us this information about our heritage and our history and our proper names as a people. Um, and so it's out of respect, it is important that we look into who Noble Drew Ali is, and understand what he was about. And then as we proceed on, we'll get into other topics. And actually, if you are, if you are a beginner in this and, you're wanting to learn about some more concepts and topics related to Moor science, or, just information about Moors, please put drop a comment saying, can you talk about this subject, or can you talk about this understanding of Moorish science, and I'll be happy to create a video regarding that different things. Like, we're going to get into the Circle 7 Quran. We're going to get into the Moor Science Temple of America. Um, we will eventually get into the idea of how do you proclaim, or how do you become a Moorish American officially or legally or lawfully. Um, so any and all of these kind of aspects will, at some point, I'll also get into this idea of more sovereign citizens, and, make a video to clarify on that as well. But anything connected to or revolving around more science, if you're interested and you want to get a basic level understanding, please let me know in the comment section, and I do my best to cover that topic. And also, I should have said this at the beginning, but let me make it clear now. I am not claiming to be the expert on Moorish American knowledge, or, I'm not claiming to be the authority on this information. I simply am doing my best to present some basic foundation level information for people that are interested. And I encourage you to, watch this, start researching the things that are mentioned, and do even further investigation on your own to verify and or correct some of the things that I've said. If it was some information that was incorrect, then please also put that in the comment section, because I'm not perfect. I may have made some mistakes, and I'm not above correction. So I just wanted to put that out as well. Um, yes. Yes. Knowing how people change over time, migration, misclassification, yes, absolutely. So that's what this video was about, and that's essentially what happened to us as a people. Um, is that we had a proper name, or a history and a heritage. We knew who we were and where we came from. And then at a point in history, after 1492, coincidentally, the same time that Christopher Columbus discovered America, um, subsequently after that, our ancestors were enslaved and stripped of their proper names, of their true identities, and these slave labels or enslavement labels, I don't like to say slave labels, but enslavement labels and names were placed on our people and forced upon us, like in the film Roots with Kunta Kinte becoming Toby. And that was part of the process, the enslavement process, to strip us and to dehumanize us and to try and force us to become perpetual slaves or be perpetually enslaved. Um, but that's not possible. God is good, and our Creator sent us a person in the name of Noble Drew Ali with information to help us realize who we are so that we could let go of those enslavement labels and names and free ourselves from the mental enslavement, because we're no longer shackled in physical chains, but we still have to let go of the mental enslavement and start being who we truly are, which is Moorish Americans. And because we are descendants of Moroccans or descendants of Moors and born in America. So thank you all for watching. I appreciate all the questions. Please, if you have any further questions, please put them in the comment section. I would love to build further. And I think that's it. Much love. Yeah. Thank you. I'll see you next time. Peace.